Joining on the sofa with Esther is Joy Shannon, writer and director of Rock Island Prison 1864, a gripping documentary short. Set during the Civil War, it tells the powerful story of Shiloh, a former slave and Union soldier, highlighting the fierce struggle for freedom and identity against the brutal resistance of Confederate forces. Okay, well, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are across the globe. Welcome to another On the Sofa with yours truly, Esther Austin. Well, today, as always, I love interviewing people. I love having discussions. I love finding about what they're doing. I love what they're doing. And I feel very privileged to be talking to Joy Shannon. Joy Shannon. She's filmmaker, she's a producer, and I feel that she's a lot more around that, but we're here to talk about her short called Rock Island Prison 1864, and to, open up about that particular story. So welcome, Joy.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me all the way here in Los Angeles. I live in Los Angeles, but I'm traveling currently at the moment. But I live
Mhm.
in Los Angeles, and thank you. And I love your show, and you seem to have a lot of energy and just all that good stuff that makes good journalism. So thanks for having
Absolutely.
me.
Absolutely. And energy is key. Energy is everything, I believe. Energy is everything. Energy doesn't lie. It's the truth. And even though we might not always see it on the outside ourselves, it's what the world sees. And
Mhm.
so we're mindful of that. And talking about energy, your film, your short, Rock Island Prison, 1864, there's so much about revelation, there's so much about pain, there's so much about history, and it's a true story as well. So we're going to explore that a bit more, but I always like to ask my guest, Joy, who is Joy in a nutshell, in a peanut shell?
Oh my God.
Nutshell.
In a peanut shell. I'm an artist in a peanut shell. I made my first film when I was like in the fourth or fifth grade, a little bitty rinky-dink thing. My mom had gotten me, and this is going to show my age, but my mom had gotten me a Super 8 movie camera. I mean, I'm sure you probably never even know about Super 8 cameras because they're so old.
Let me just ask Siri. Hold on a minute.
Oh, you're gonna ask Siri? Oh, that's not nice. Ooh.
Oh, sorry.
Ooh, it took me a minute to catch it. But yeah, she got me a Super 8 camera and I just made little films and then from there I went to got older and went to Fisk University in Nashville, Tennessee. It's a historically black college and there was they didn't have a film department, so they would fly in a film professor from California, an African American older filmmaker named Carlton Moss, who
Mm,
really never got his opportunity in Hollywood, but he would come once a month to Fisk to teach us about filmmaking. I stayed at Fisk for 2 years and then I transferred to Howard University in Washington, D.C. Now, Howard had a lot of equipment. They had all the fancy cameras, they had the editing bays, they had the recording machines, they had everything. So I fell in love and I stayed there, fell in love with the film department and stayed there. And they also had a professor by the name of Haile Garima. I don't know if you
mm,
know him from Sankofa.
no.
And yeah, he'd made Sankofa and a whole bunch of other really good films. He's Ethiopian. He was one of the professors.
Okay.
So I stayed there at Howard and made films with professional cameras. And then from there, I got a master's in filmmaking from the American University in Washington, D.C., and made more films in Washington, D.C., and then relocated to Los Angeles. And I've been in Los Angeles ever since. So, in a nutshell, I'm a filmmaker that started at a very, very young age. And, for women, not for all women, for a lot of women, it takes years to get in, and
Mm,
especially in my age bracket. Now, the younger female filmmakers are having much more opportunities. But when I was in their age coming to LA, there was just nothing for us, really. There really wasn't much for us at all. It was almost like a desert in terms of opportunities. But the younger ones in their 20s and 30s now, they have no idea how blessed they are because they're directing TV series and they're directing TV shows and they're directing music videos. All of that just it just wasn't for us that much when I was younger.
But
So
isn't but isn't that because you've paid people from you say your age bracket have paved the way, have paved the path? Because if you didn't take it's not just about initiative, but if you didn't have the courage to step into that field at that time and say, in spite of and despite of the sort of roadblocks, they wouldn't be where they are now. So, a lot of women or people that came before have paved the path to make it easier, do you think, Joy?
oh yeah, no, absolutely. Every generation, that's our obligation is to help the future, the next generation. So yeah, we did what we could, but it would have been nice if the opportunities had been there. And I
Mm.
think about women older than me, and I said, gosh, I'm complaining that I didn't get much. Black women directors older than me, I mean, they could only dream about making a Hollywood film. They
Mm.
probably couldn't even go on the set unless they were there to, deliver something or clean up or something. They can only dream about it. So yeah, no, you're right. We have helped each other, but it sure would have been nice if it was never like that.
Mm. But then maybe, and this I'm just presenting this to you, maybe if it hadn't been as difficult, you might not have produced some of the work that you've produced from that space,
Yeah,
I'd say.
that's possible. But you know what? I mean, you're right. There's a lot of art that comes from struggle. But then I think about those who don't struggle and they get budgets for $20 million and $10 million and $15 million to do a film. And I'm thinking, gosh, that's such a nice life. Do we always have to struggle? Can't we just have the nice life too?
Oh, the flow.
So I don't know. I want to try the nice life way. So yeah.
Hopefully we're going to now talk about your short Rock Island Prison 1864. And I'm just going to read a brief about that.
Okay, thank you.
So Joy Shannon's Rock Island 1864 is a gripping and emotionally charged narrative film that unearths the raw tension of the Civil War era. It delves into the themes of power, ownership, and the fight for identity against the backdrop of one of history's most turbulent periods. Through the character of Shiloh, a former slave turned Union soldier, the narrative exposes the brutal mindset of Confederate soldiers who refused to accept the changing tides of freedom and equality. At the heart of this story is a harrowing confrontation between Shiloh and his former slave master, now a Confederate prisoner, at Rock Island Prison, the same prison that Shiloh must guard. The dialogue between the two men is filled with venomous resentment from the former master who refuses to relinquish his claim, over Shiloh, insisting that he is still property. Shannon masterfully captures the psychological and emotional warfare between oppressor and oppressed, bringing to life the intense struggle of Black soldiers who had to fight not only on the battlefield, but also against deeply ingrained racist ideology. So that is a nice intro to what is and what I felt when watching it, a very profound film. And when it mentions about the psychological and the emotional backdrop of this. So what we're going to do now, we're going to unpeel this, Joy. Why this short? Why a film about this subject matter?
Okay. Well, first I want to thank you for reading that wonderful intro by our friend Deborah, Deborah
Hater.
Hayter, a
Yes.
publicist. And we just won an award for the film. We won the
Oh,
best drama short in the Hollywood Reel, REEL, Independent Film Festival. That was just last week in Los Angeles. And we also won, thank you. We also won the best drama short in the Chicago Feedback Film Festival. And we were a nominee in the I believe it's the Venice Shorts, and we were semifinalists in the Los. No, I'm sorry, we were nominees in the Los Angeles Film Awards and semifinalists in the Venice Shorts. Now, in terms of why this film, this is based on a true story in my hometown. I grew up in the Midwest, and we kind of have been taught that most of the anti-slavery activities and the slavery activities were in the southern part of America. But there have been some, we're finding out more and more that there were some forms of resistance in the Midwest and up north. And so in my small little sleepy Midwestern town, we had a Union prison, and the prison housed Confederate soldiers. And during the last year, the white soldiers, Union soldiers who were guarding the Confederates, were replaced by Black Union soldiers
Mm,
to guard the Confederates. And the dynamics, can you imagine that here these young men are, these Union soldiers, the Black ones, they are recent runaways, having experiencing freedom for the first time in life. They weren't like born free like we are, but for
mm,
the first time in life, experiencing freedom. They join the Union. I mean, they run away by on foot, and it takes them weeks and weeks, maybe even months, to go from Mississippi to up north on foot. And and so they join the Union Army, and one of their first assignments is to guard prisoners at a Union prison. And it's the Confederates who are aggressively fighting to keep them in slavery. And so, according to a staff member at the Arsenal Museum, which is where the prison once was, some of the young men ran into their masters. And I said, I got to put that into a film. Those dynamics were they were just calling me. So that's why I did it. We shot it about not too long ago, maybe, I don't know, 6 to 9 months ago. And we shot it one day for one day in Los Angeles. And just made it into a film, and I hope to at some point get it made into either a feature or a limited series or a series.
mm,
And I think one reason why it's important is that we're in a period in America now where there's a movement to erase Black
mm,
accomplishments, accomplishments to erase Black culture, to erase Black history. And we have so many elected politicians who don't mind doing this. And
mm.
so it's important now that we have to bring out as much as we can, because if not, who knows in 50 years what will be left of what we've done in this country.
Mm. And as you're talking, Joy, I'm sort of feeling this whole sort of sensation around what the emotional impact, influence, um, and maybe even destructive forces that had on both parties, but more so for the Black soldiers. You can imagine, I can just maybe surmise the fear that they went through having to guard their former masters, and sometimes their own battling with their own identity as they did that, because it wasn't just emotional and psychological, but also the physical memories and aspects of being a slave of a master. Because Shiloh mentioned at one point, he goes, he was worse than Satan. His master was worse than Satan. So that gave the perception of such severe brutality that many of us may not even be able to understand or perceive. And so, from putting this film together from that perspective, what was it like to interpret that into your body of work, that feeling by a former slave?
It was very difficult because you're right. We have no idea of what it was like physically for them, or emotionally or psychologically. I mean, I just can't imagine generation after generation after generation. That is as far as your life goes.
Yes.
And if you speak up, you can be tortured, you can even be killed. And so it is difficult. And I think the actor, and he grew up in America, but his parents are from Nigeria. So that was nice that he kind of had a connection to
Mm,
Africa, as opposed to a Black American actor who that connection has been broken for many, many years. So I think one thing he did was he tried to humble the character, but keeping him strong at the same time. The character has to build up to his strength. And I know a lot of people, some people have watched it and they're saying, oh, he should have been tough to the master in the beginning, but you couldn't be back then.
mm,
You couldn't be tough because even though the former master was a prisoner, he was still white, and he
mm,
still had power as a white man. And
mm,
so, and Shiloh was born on his plantation. It wasn't like he was just there for the last year or two. That is his whole existence. So the physical torture that was put on the slaves to keep them in place was just, it was, I think it's just incomprehensible that we just have no idea that, you say one thing wrong, or you look the wrong way, or you just do a simple thing wrong and you get 20 lashes. I mean, it's like, my
How they
gosh.
feeling?
Yeah, I mean, or for just wanting to read, you get 20 lashes. Just simple things that now all human beings, have access to. But back then it was illegal for them to read. So yeah,
Mm,
you touch a book and you're in trouble. You're in serious trouble. So we had to bring that in there, those dynamics, and allow the character to work up to his strength, where he does in the last scene stand up for himself. But it takes him a minute. It takes him a minute, because it's not like prison films nowadays where the guards come in a powerful position in prison films nowadays. They come in big and tough and muscles and guns, and no one says anything to the guards in prison films nowadays. But back then, you're looking at 160 years ago. Back then it was different. And then these young men, it was their first time being free. And I think that's important too, that they could call their own shots. If they wanted to stay up until 8 o'clock at night, they could. Whereas in the plantation, they had strict rules. If they wanted to just look at the stars all night and
mm,
just do whatever they wanted, they could. So they had freedom. It was just, they were just different. It was just a different world for them. And it's amazing that we survived all of that and we're still here. It's
yeah,
just amazing on the limited food that they had, the limited water that they had,
they
the
still
bad
survive. And
food, yeah, that
limited
was given to them. They didn't get the good food, they got the bad food. And then they had to work from sun up to sundown, and never got any money for it. And we're still here after all of that. So that's what the character had to try to put into Shiloh, because he had to work up to it. He doesn't come in rough and tough guard. He had to be like, oh my goodness, here we go again. I thought life was getting better, and here we go again. Look at who I'm guarding. But it's the transfer of power that I think is important. And I just want to add one thing, and I know I'm going on and on. It's
no,
like
no.
it was like the two of them reflect where America is today. um, the former the master Clement, he reflects the extreme conservative viewpoint that is attacking Black America so much, that is taking away from Black America so much. Shiloh reflects Black America, who many of us don't know what to do, and we're being quiet. And by the end of the film, what the film says is that we have to stand up to it. We have to stand up to it. If not, we'll have nothing in 50 years. We'll have no jobs, we'll have no this, we'll have no that. So they are symbolic of where America is in some ways.
And something that's come out of that is fear. Because when you fear someone, you have to try to control, you have to
Oh
subject
yeah.
to. And like you said, the level of brutality that the slaves faced. And you talked about Silo in terms of, well, slaves generally, in terms of bad food, working extremely long hours, no freedom anyway, not even to read. But also you have to think about what it did to their family, having family torn away. So it wasn't just their own initial experience, but the experience of everyone around them, everyone they knew and loved and formed bondships and ties with. And those were constantly being pulled, taken away from. So they had all of that to manage. So you can imagine that having this freedom, and it took a while for him to understand that freedom, because he was still trying to understand his freedom for himself, but also having the freedom to make decisions. And one of those, and having a choice and being able to guard your former master, it must have been terrifying. And I noticed when I watched the film that one of the other guards told him, you've got to own it. You've got to
Mhm.
own it, because he was thinking of running away initially, but he says, no, you've got to own it. So all these different levels of fear, and then for the master to be in that place of, and I don't know if he had any remorse, but to be in a place where he was being subjected underneath now. He was supposed to be the underdog now. That is also another dynamic like he's talking
Yeah,
transfer of power. Uh,
absolutely. Yeah, because all based on all the research I found, when the black soldiers were brought there, the Confederates had a fit.
mm,
They had a fit on that prison. They didn't want that. So, and not only did the Confederate prisoners have a fit, some of the people in the town didn't
yes.
like that the black guards were there. They were complaining, saying, what is this? Blacks are over, even though these were not the people in the town were they weren't Southerners, but
Mhm.
still they didn't like the black guards being
Um,
brought there. So yeah, so it was a reaction. Um, it was a big reaction that you had blacks over whites, because that was just unheard of.
mm,
And so you look at the things that President Lincoln did, and I said, him, by doing things like that, I think kind of predetermined his destiny, his destiny of being assassinated. Just doing things like that just got so many people angry with him. Like, how dare you put a black person over a white person, even as a guard? You can't even be a guard. So yeah, I think he kind of sealed his fate by doing those type of things. But you're right,
and
the psychological, I mean, the stress, and that's one thing we don't think about much when we look at um, slavery. We don't look
mm,
at the mental stress that they must have been under. We look at the physical torture
yes.
that they were under, but the mental stress that it had to have been very difficult. It was almost like they were really superheroes if you think about it. I mean, they were they were really, because I couldn't live like that. I couldn't have gone through that. They were superheroes. That was a super breed
Mm.
that God made for that purpose. Because I don't know if most of us could live under those conditions.
But do you think also, Joy, that there's something about, I remember watching something maybe a few years ago, and they were trying to understand, is it something that they knew they were enduring because that was all they knew? Yeah. So if that's their life, they were born into it, they died in it. And I always remember, yeah, watching something, and she goes, "Well, that's all we knew. So we didn't realize that. They didn't realize that they were slaves."
Well, yes, they were born into it. You're right, and that is all they knew. And so but they also had the desire for something better, because we had so many that ran away even before the Union, before the Civil War. We had so many that ran away that wanted something better, a better lifestyle or a better life. Um, so I think that's in all human beings,
Mm,
something better than just getting up and going to work, getting up and going to work, getting up and going to work. Um, or we wouldn't have had so many runaways. And then we had those who secretly learned to read.
yes.
And so I think, yeah, that's true. That is all they knew. But at the same time, it's just that desire for something better that we all is in our DNA. It's in our species,
Yeah.
that kept them saying, there's something better beyond what I have.
Mm. And sort of winding down, and I probably will keep you here for another 15, 20 minutes, keep saying we're going to wind down.
Oh, that's okay.
But for you, working on this production, do you feel it changed you in any way? Did it change your perception?
Well, I think what it is that I had to do a lot of research on the Civil War.
Mm,
And the Civil War was a very fascinating time in American history. And it helped to determine the America that we know today. And I think what was interesting was the money and we don't talk about the money that slavery brought.
yeah.
And so I would every now and then find an article about the money that the South was getting and that's why they did not want to give up slavery. And I found an article, and I'm going to fact check it to make sure it's right. But it said that the Civil War, the South knew that if they lost the Civil War, they would lose 5 billion with the B dollars from slavery. And that's back then. So 5 billion back then is, my gosh, who knows what that is today. So I'm going to fact check it to make sure that article's right. But even if it's off somewhat, the money that slavery was bringing in was just enormous. And so that kind of the research on doing that helped me to broaden my perspective. So yeah, so it did change me in that way. But I also think another good thing that came out of the research were the abolitionists. We don't
Mm,
give enough time to abolitionists. A lot of them were white, some were black, but they really, really helped a lot. And I do appreciate the white abolitionists that we did have that risked their lives, and some were even killed to stop slavery. And I think another good thing that came out of it was it showed how we wanted to take our own destiny in our own hands, that we did not just want to sit back and do nothing. And so taking our destiny in our own hands was very important. So yeah, it was good. The research really was good. Like I said, I didn't realize how interesting the Civil War was going to be.
mm,
Because you hear about it in school and you're like, yeah, yeah, yeah. But once I started getting deep into it, it was a very fascinating point in American history.
mm. And I feel like you said, where things are in the States at this moment in time, it's very symbolic. Its message is very symbolic. Its reference, its mirroring is very symbolic. And so
Yeah.
what else would you want people to take away from your show? And also, where can they see it, Joy?
Well, it's in its festival run now. So I'm sure when it finishes its festival run by the end of the year, I'll probably put it up on YouTube and people can just watch it then. Maybe you'll have me back at the end of the year and I will
Absolutely.
I can tell them where they can see it. But yeah, so in terms of I got caught on the where they can see it question. And the question prior to that was, if you can repeat the question prior to that.
Sorry. So can't remember, but we
I
can
know we both got caught.
we both got caught,
I
but I
got
just want
caught up on
people
where
I
they
just
can
want
see
people
it.
to see. I just want people to see it.
Oh, what did they walk away with? I think
That's
that was
right.
something
Yes.
like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
You want
I
them to.
think the biggest thing to walk away, what I want people to walk away with, especially young Black men,
Mm,
our young ones in their high school and in college and just in that age bracket, is how important it is for young Black males to stand up to discrimination, to stand up to our rights being taken away. We can't be quiet now. This is what we're going through now. This country is not a drill. We're going through some very unusual times. I'm sure you hear about it over in the
yeah.
UK, what's happening to us here. And so our young men have to stand up. They have to be like Shiloh and his buddy Samuel, who said, "Hey, look, guy, we gotta double down too." And we're in the thick of it. So I think that's an important thing, and I think it's good for women too, but mostly for the young men to stand up for a better world for us, because so much is questionable as to what's happening. So much is really, and I'm just trying to be very
I
safe
know.
with what I'm
Yeah,
saying, but so
I can
much is
exactly.
questionable. So I just want our men to stand up.
And have the support network around them as they do stand up.
Thank you. That's
Have
a good way to end.
support,
Yep, that's a good way.
the unity, so that things don't go back to the way they are, but you're creating a different narrative
Hmm.
future. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to say a huge thank you to Joy for joining me on the sofa. I just can't wait to see this short. It's very powerful on so many levels. And I just want to say thank you to Deborah Hayter, who's really publicist, Hollywood publicist, who's been instrumental in supporting the visibility of this film and introducing Joy to me. Wishing you all the best, and we will definitely connect by the end of the year, Joy.
Well,
Thank.
thank you so much, and it's a pleasure meeting you, and I'm sure you're going to go and do great things. And thank you so much, and hopefully you'll come to the States one day,
Oh,
and
I
I can
will
meet you in
be.
person.
Absolutely. That's on the cards. I've
And
been
lunch will be on me.
I'm into grits. I love my grits and catfish, but
Okay. Well, I'm sure you all make them slightly different there than here. You'll have to come have them both and see which one you like the most. We have do you do fish and grits, like fried catfish, or not
well,
really? Do shrimp?
grits is it's not really a British thing. It's an American thing. But when I discovered it, I think 4 years ago when I came to the States, and I remember every time I was taken out, I just had a bowl of grits with
Oh, you eat them here. Oh, okay.
bowl of grits
Okay.
with catfish. And by the time I left the States it was 2023, I was over there for 2 months. I'd had so much grits. I thought,
Oh, good. Okay, okay.
yeah,
That's
it would be
wonderful.
lovely to meet you. It would be lovely to meet you. So, ladies and
Okay, thank you. Thanks for having me.
gentlemen, thank you
Okay,
very much.
thanks.
If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more content. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to click the bell icon for notifications on future videos. Thank you for watching.